All right, day 2 of the mobility routine that I've started doing about a day ago. Yeah, about a day ago. All right, so I'm going through the same exercises for the mobility of my posture, upper back, and I'm using a 15-pound weight again. And right now I'm just trying to hold the position for about 5 to 10 seconds, first starting on my hand and then going even lower onto my elbows. That gives me a slightly deeper stretch around my hips. And then after I do one side, I switch to the other side to try and even things out. Also getting a stretch on my hip and strengthening and stretching the muscles on my shoulder and upper back. All right, first starting on my hand, holding for about 5 to 10 seconds, and then going down into my elbow, going lower towards the floor, getting a deeper stretch for my hip. And then I'm going to switch to the next exercise, which is something pretty similar. Or do I? No, I do the same thing. One more time on the right side, just to be safe. Because I think here I felt something was a little bit off for the first set on the right side. So I tried again. And I think for the second time, I tried to make an adjustment to my form. And what I can see right now, I'm slightly off to the left a little bit. All right, because the ideal position is to have your hand straight up, all the way down along the bodies, all the way across the other arm to the floor, and it should be in a straight line. But my right hip is a little bit more stiff and tighter than my left side. So it's a little bit harder. That's probably why I did it again. So 2 on the right, 1 on the left. Okay, now I'm in a straight leg stance, doing the same thing, but going straight into the elbow to the floor position. Because for this one, I don't really feel much of a stretch with my arm fully extended, so I go right into the elbow to the floor, which still doesn't really feel like much of a stretch, because my hips in this position are pretty flexible and mobile, so I don't get too much stimulus, too much stretch from this. So I just hold this once on each side, and then I will be moving on to the last exercise in this particular sequence. Yep, looking a little bit exhausted here. These exercises are not as easy as I imagined. They're actually quite strenuous, and you feel a little exhausted after, and it's only been about maybe 2 minutes. All right, so for this one, you start in a full standing position and you squat down. And there's a slight correction to the form that I made, which was instead of placing my hand on the floor, I grab onto my opposite ankle. Because after reviewing the proper form from the Squat University video, I felt like I was doing something wrong, so I watched it over again. And the guy in the video, instead of placing his hand directly on the floor, he kind of goes off to the side, doesn't quite grab onto his ankles, but moves his hand towards his ankles. And by doing it this way, you're holding the squat position a little bit better. And I find that it's still a little bit harder to do when I try to rotate towards my right side, because my right side is a little bit restricted. So I'm going to have to keep working on that. So next, I'm moving on to the hamstring standing pike stretch, where I just grab onto the back of my legs and try to straighten my legs, getting a deep hamstring stretch when my legs are fully straightened. All right, so the goal here is just try and go a little bit lower so I could reach the floor a little bit easier with my legs straightened. And I couldn't do this for a long time, so it took a long time for me to develop flexibility in this position. Right, and part of the limiting factors are both my lower back and my hamstrings here. But this has been getting easier, and I could slap the floor with my palms without even bending my knees, which is pretty cool. All right, so next we have my cat coming into frame. I'm going into the Cossack squat. My cat, making sure everything is good, checking my form. Looks like it checks out. All right, so right now I'm just trying to open my knees to the side, my hips, just trying to go as wide as I can and bringing my hips close to the floor as low as I can go. So right here I do about 10 reps. So I'm using my hands to support myself on the floor. All right. So next I go into I think it's called the ATG split squat. And the purpose of this move is to stretch out your hips, your hip flexors, also the muscles in the front leg, the knee, the quads, the ankles. Well, just one ankle, the one in the front. And I hold this for about 10 seconds and then I switch to the other side. But before I do that, I go into my attempt of a front split just to see how far I am off the floor. And from here it looks like it's at least 6 to 10 inches off the floor. So now I switch to the other side to do the same thing. First, starting with the ATG split squat, getting that stretch on the right hip flexor. So right now I'm just trying to shift my hip back as far as I can go and not bend from my lower back. So I'm just trying to keep my upper body vertical so I could feel a deeper stretch in my hip flexor. And now I'm going into the front split, but on the other side, just to see how far I can go. And it looks about the same, maybe about 6 to 10 inches from where my hips are to the floor. And next I go into a straddle split position, and this one's a little bit easier for me to get lower to the ground because I've been practicing this one for a while now, about 2 years on and off. And I've worked up to the point where I could hold a straddle position without any support. So my hands are off the floor, and it took me a while to develop that, maybe like 6 months, trying to go wider every time. And this one was really hard. So right now, my hips are on the floor. I'm not in a full split position. My legs are still open, maybe about 120 degrees. I don't know. Okay, so next I move on to a straight arm lat stretch using a wall or a shelf for support. So right now I'm just trying not to round my lower back and just push my arm straight above my head into the shelf. So now I am feeling a stretch from right below the armpit all the way down to my lower back, which is where the lat muscle attaches, and that's what I want to stretch. And the key here, the goal for this movement is to try and loosen up, or what's the right word? Try to increase my range of motion, my flexibility for my shoulders, because that's a very limiting, what's the phrase? That's a very, very tight area in my upper body. I have a lot of limited range of motion when it comes to shoulder mobility. Okay, so now what am I doing? I forgot. All right. I was just about to go into like a handstand thing, but I just remembered I have to do a back bend. And what I was talking about in the previous video was the positioning. If I move my feet forward like I'm doing here, I should be able to get a slightly increased range of motion in my shoulders as I lift my body up off the floor. And I remember when I was doing this, just like in the video right now, I didn't feel much of a difference, but it looks like from watching this, there is a slight difference in the range of motion, where my shoulders and elbows are slightly more straightened out, and I'm trying to just lift myself off the floor with my shoulders rather than bending so much from the hip and the lower back, which is what I was trying to avoid. Okay, so now I'm switching back over, going into some wrist and hand conditioning exercises. All right, just rotating, shifting my weight forward and back, getting my hand used to holding some sort of body weight, some sort of weight resistance, because it hurts a lot when you try to place a lot of weight into your wrist in that position. All right, so right now it looks like I'm trying to get a little bit higher, try to shift my body weight a little bit more forward. Maybe even thinking about kicking up into a handstand. But same as before, there's a lot of things around me, and I don't want to hurt myself. Or do I? Just feeling it out right now, trying to get my legs straight. Right, so my arms are fully vertical, but my upper body is still angled backwards. Okay. Cat coming through, making sure everything is okay. All right, so right now, what's going on, I have decided that I'm going to use the shelf to support into going into a handstand. So getting close to the shelf, getting ready to kick off, possibly bouncing off the shelf, hitting the shelf on the wall, potentially falling back onto me. Oop, not quite. Maybe third time. Nope. Four. Oh, there we go. Right, so it looks like my feet are off the floor. All right, so I can't see right here, but when I was doing this, my feet was not touching the shelf. So I am actually holding a handstand, a freestanding handstand right here. And I remember practicing this. I was trying to focus on Oh, my cat coming over to check. Is everything okay? But yeah, that's it.